The confirmation arrived without ceremony, yet its impact was more explosive than any public proclamation. Princess Anne had been formally appointed Crown Family Guardian, a powerful private role giving her direct responsibility for royal continuity, the protection of the heirs, and the resolution of internal family disputes. It was the position Camilla had demanded for herself. But when Catherine saw Anne's name on the final document, something inside the future queen appeared to break. Before we go deeper into what this really means for the royal family, make sure to subscribe so you don't miss a single update. Catherine read the page again, inside the Windsor sitting room, as though the name might change. It did not. Her fingers tightened around the paper, before one hand moved to the table. William watched, but the prince said nothing. He understood that her pain was not jealousy. Anne had never been the enemy. The words beneath the appointment made the silence heavier. Crown Family Guardian meant a private royal office, created to protect the direct heirs, oversee family arrangements, and step in when conflict threatened stability. That authority now belonged to Anne. The decision placed another royal figure between Catherine's family and pressure from the wider palace. Catherine lowered the document and asked the question William had feared. Did the palace believe she could no longer protect her children? He moved closer, choosing his answer carefully, but his hesitation wounded her before reassurance arrived. The future king insisted the appointment was not a judgment against her at the highest royal level, yet neither had been warned about the handwritten clause beneath Anne's name. William traced the line with his thumb. Anne could act whenever the future sovereign's household faces internal pressure. The phrase was precise, cold, and dangerous. It suggested that someone inside the palace believed the Wales household was already under strain. Worse, it gave no name to the source of that pressure. Camilla received her copy at Clarence House minutes later. The Queen Consort recognized the wording because it came from the proposal she had submitted months before. She had argued that standing beside Charles entitled her to influence over William, Catherine, and the children. Now her request had been stripped of her name, rewritten with limits, and handed to Anne. Catherine looked at William and asked who had approved language concerning George, Charlotte, and Louis, without speaking to their parents. He turned to the final page. There, beneath the clause, stood Charles's signature. The appointment had wounded Catherine, but the signature beneath it revealed that this was not simply Anne's elevation. It was a decision made inside the deepest fault line of the royal family. Behind the official language stood three women carrying three very different fears. Camilla saw the role as the final proof that she truly belonged at the center of royal power. Anne viewed it as a burden she had never requested but could not refuse. Catherine saw something more painful. An official admission that the future queen, despite years of loyalty, sacrifice, and discipline, was no longer trusted to stand alone against the forces closing around her family. Catherine waited until George, Charlotte, and Louis had left before turning to William. The room felt smaller without the children, yet the question between them grew larger. As their mother and the woman expected to stand beside the future king, she carried responsibility for family and crown. Anne's appointment placed another royal figure between that household and the palace. "Do they think I failed?" Catherine asked. William rejected the idea, but the prince paused before reaching for her hand. That pause betrayed him. She saw it immediately. He insisted the Crown Family Guardian, a private office designed to shield the direct heirs and manage pressure around them, was not meant to replace her authority. Even so, his careful words showed he knew more than he was saying. Camilla confronted Charles before evening ended. The Queen Consort demanded to know why the role she had designed had been handed to his sister. When the king looked away, she pushed her chair back and told him the palace had turned years of loyalty into humiliation. He answered softly, but did not deny her proposal had been used. Anne carried a different burden. In a documented private conversation with Edward, she admitted she had first refused the appointment. The Princess Royal had spent decades avoiding palace ambition, making her selection difficult to attack. She accepted only after being shown a confidential record detailing repeated attempts to influence decisions involving George, Charlotte, and Louis. Edward asked whether Catherine knew. Anne said she did not, Not yet. William had already seen part of that record. It explained his hesitation and filled him with dread. Revealing the truth would show Catherine how close Camilla had come to gaining formal access to decisions about their children. Hiding it would make his silence feel like betrayal. Catherine watched him withdraw and understood the appointment was only the surface wound. The real struggle had begun earlier, during one specific royal ceremony, when a chair was moved, a folder opened, and Camilla crossed a boundary no one inside the palace could ignore, and changed the family forever. To understand why Anne was chosen, Catherine would have to return to the single afternoon when a ceremonial gesture became a declaration of control. The crisis began months earlier inside St. George's Hall, beneath the polished rituals of a private succession ceremony. What appeared to be a harmless rehearsal became the moment everything changed. Camilla moved a chair, opened a sealed briefing folder, and spoke as though the future of William's children belonged partly to her. Catherine said nothing in public, but those who witnessed her face understood that a line had been crossed, and that the palace would eventually be forced to choose sides. Catherine had entered expecting a limited family discussion, not a struggle over her children. The Windsor succession preparedness ceremony was a private rehearsal designed to decide how senior royals and the Wales children would act during a future change of sovereign. Anne attended only as an observer. Camilla arrived with an advisor, crossed the room, and took the seat reserved beside Catherine for William. The first insult looked almost harmless. The Queen Consort moved Catherine's folder aside, opened another document, and announced that the Queen should hold permanent supervisory authority over the heirs during any period of royal instability. That power would have allowed her to influence decisions involving George, Charlotte, and Louis whenever the palace declared an emergency. Catherine did not raise her voice. She looked directly at Camilla and said decisions concerning the children would remain with their parents. The answer came quickly. The crown, she was told, could not always be governed by maternal instinct. The words struck harder than anger because they reduced a mother's protection to weakness. Anne closed the folder with one hand. The princess asked who had authorized such powers, and Camilla replied that Charles had been informed. Yet a documented account prepared afterward showed the king had seen only a short summary, not the full proposal or its reach into William's household. A palace secretary recorded every sentence. That confidential transcript, a written word-for-word account of the exchange, later became the foundation for the crown family guardian role. But Anne insisted on safeguards that blocked Camilla from controlling it and protected the parents' final authority. Catherine learned the truth only after William showed her the record. She understood then why his silence had carried fear. Anne had taken that transcript directly into Charles's study and forced her brother to choose between shielding his wife from humiliation and shielding the future crown from control. The chair had been moved back into place, but the insult remained, and when Anne entered the king's study with the transcript, the family dispute became a battle for the monarchy's future. There were no aides in the room when Anne finally confronted Camilla. No secretaries, no carefully prepared statements, and no ceremonial smiles to soften what had to be said. Between them lay the document that had shattered Catherine and exposed a private campaign for control. Camilla demanded recognition. Anne demanded restraint. And when the queen accused her sister-in-law of stealing the role she had created, the Princess Royal answered with a sentence that ended every illusion of family unity. Anne had summoned Camilla to a private drawing room at Windsor before the appointment became public. She placed the original proposal beside the revised Crown Family Guardian Charter, a formal written order defining who could protect the direct heirs and when that authority could be used. The two documents looked similar, their limits did not. Camilla touched the first page and asked why her idea had been turned against her. The Queen Consort said she had stood beside Charles through scandal, rejection, and public hostility. Yet whenever the future monarchy was discussed, she was treated like an intruder. Anne listened without interruption, but the princess did not soften. Anne explained that parts of the proposal had been preserved because George, Charlotte, and Louis needed stronger protection from palace pressure. Every clause allowing the king's wife to overrule William or Catherine had been removed. Camilla's expression hardened. She accused her sister-in-law of stealing the position while pretending to save the family. "Belonging to this family does not give anyone ownership over its children," Anne replied. Camilla insisted she had wanted order, not control. The princess leaned forward and delivered the sentence that ended the argument. "Order without consent is control." Silence followed. Then the queen revealed, through her recorded account of an earlier private conversation, that Charles had once promised to consider giving her the role. Anne understood the betrayal immediately. The king had allowed Camilla to believe the proposal remained alive, even after privately accepting that William would never approve it. His silence had protected peace briefly, but it had poisoned trust on every side. Anne opened the final charter and pointed to its sharpest restriction. No person married into the royal family could exercise independent authority over the direct heirs. Camilla stared at the line and knew it had been written because of her conduct. The door opened before either woman spoke again. Charles stood there, saw both documents on the table, and realized they were demanding the truth. Anne had spoken with brutal clarity, but the decision still rested on the man standing in the doorway, caught between the wife beside him and the dynasty beyond him. Charles's signature appeared to settle the matter, but it concealed a far more painful truth. The king had not acted freely. He had been cornered by constitutional advisors, family testimony, and his own fear that private tension could one day damage the succession. Yet the final choice remained his. He could protect Camilla from embarrassment, or he could protect William's household from interference. When he lifted the pen, he understood that whichever name he approved would leave someone he loved feeling betrayed. Charles returned to his study and read Camilla's original request alone. A private royal charter was the formal written order that would create the new role and define its limits. His signature was essential, but William's written consent was equally necessary because the prince would inherit the crown and the decisions now touched his children directly. 3 senior family trustees had also approved the charter after reviewing its protective limits carefully. The king stopped at the clause, allowing Camilla to intervene in the upbringing and public preparation of George, Charlotte, and Louis. He read it twice, then placed the document face down. That power mattered because it could shift parental authority from William and Catherine toward another household. It also threatened the trust holding father and son together. Anne entered after being summoned. Charles admitted that rejecting the queen would wound his marriage and confirm her fear that she would never be fully accepted. His sister did not deny the pain. She warned that granting the role would wound Catherine's family, weaken William's confidence, and turn private resentment into a permanent break. William had supported Anne for one reason above all. She sought no competing household power. The princess had no claim through marriage, no wish to reshape succession, and no need to prove her place beside the sovereign. Her authority would be restraint, not ambition. Catherine's letter carried the greatest weight. In a documented private note sent weeks earlier, she told Charles she would withdraw from palace planning sessions before allowing another household to direct her children. The words were calm, but their meaning was explosive. The future queen was prepared to step away rather than surrender as a mother. William then delivered the final warning in a recorded father-son conversation. If Camilla received the role, all informal cooperation between their households would end. Charles understood that the fracture was no longer distant. It was already beneath his hand. The king signed Anne's name and ordered Catherine's letter sealed. But before sunset, one copied passage reached Camilla. The king had chosen stability on paper, yet the leaked words from Catherine's letter ensured that no one inside the family would experience the decision peacefully. By breakfast, the appointment had already altered the royal household. Meetings were cancelled. Access lists were rewritten. Advisors who once carried Camilla's instructions into rooms connected to the Wales family were suddenly turned away. But the deepest humiliation came in a single copied sentence from Catherine's letter. She would rather step back than surrender authority over her children. Camilla read the line alone, folded the page with trembling precision, and realized the future queen had been prepared to risk everything to stop her. Camilla dismissed the room before anyone could study her face. The queen consort waited until the door closed, crushed one corner of the paper between her fingers, then placed it beside her untouched tea. Anne's authority had taken effect immediately. Every proposal involving the heirs, private royal residences, emergency family plans, and succession preparation now had to pass through the princess before reaching Charles. The change carried real power. Succession preparation meant the private planning used to prepare the royal family for a future change of sovereign. Control over those discussions could shape George's duties, Charlotte's ceremonial future, and the household surrounding William's children. 2 meetings requested by Camilla's advisors disappeared from the calendar before noon. Catherine felt no victory when William told her the letter had circulated. She had written those words in fear, not anger. Now palace staff were reading them as a direct attack on the Queen. The future king tried to calm her, but she asked how something meant only for Charles had reached Clarence House. William found the answer in a documented internal account. A senior advisor had copied the passage, hoping the warning would persuade Camilla to accept the decision quietly. Instead, the leak convinced her that Catherine had personally designed her defeat. What was meant as restraint became fuel. Anne acted within minutes. The princess suspended the advisor, ordered every copy recovered, and demanded a complete search of the appointment files. Her staff then found something far more dangerous: an alternative draft of the charter naming Camilla temporary guardian if Charles became unable to act. Catherine read that draft in stunned silence. Anne had not simply received a role the Queen wanted. She may have stopped Camilla from gaining it at the final possible moment. Catherine then asked for a private meeting with Anne. No William, no Charles, no palace officials. The public decision had made Anne look powerful, but Catherine now needed to know whether the princess had accepted the role to replace her or to save her. For the first time since the announcement, Catherine and Anne sat together without documents, advisors, or royal titles separating them. The future queen arrived carrying one unbearable question: had the family lost confidence in her? Anne's answer did not come immediately. She crossed the room, closed the door herself, and admitted that the role had never been created because Catherine was weak. It had been created because too many people had begun treating her strength as something they were entitled to exploit. Catherine had asked William to remain outside the small Windsor library. The future king accepted, though leaving her alone with Anne went against every instinct to defend her. She needed no interpreter between them. She needed to hear whether the princess had accepted the crown family guardian role, a private office designed to block pressure on the heirs' household, as protection or as authority. Catherine spoke first. Seeing Anne's name, she confessed, had felt like watching the monarchy place another woman above her as a mother. Years of discipline, silence, and sacrifice suddenly seemed reduced to one verdict: she could not cope alone. Her voice remained controlled, but the pain beneath it did not. Anne reached across the table. The princess told her that accepting help was not surrender. She had taken the role because Catherine had been forced to carry too much, while no one inside the institution possessed formal power to say enough to Charles, Camilla, advisors, or future courtiers pressing into William's household. Catherine asked the question that mattered most: could Anne ever overrule her? Anne opened the signed copy and pointed to a handwritten condition added before approval. Catherine must personally authorize every decision involving George, Charlotte, or Louis, unless both parents were legally unable to act. The clause mattered because it protected parental control while still giving the princess power to stop outside interference before it reached the children. Anne then revealed, through the written undertaking attached to the charter, that the office would expire when William became king. It could never become a permanent rival authority beside Catherine or follow her into the next reign. Relief did not arrive as triumph. Catherine lowered her eyes, realizing the appointment had not placed Anne over her. It had placed someone beside her, strong enough to absorb pressure without taking her place. That distinction restored something fear had nearly taken from her: trust itself. Yet one danger remained. Camilla still believed the role represented a public rejection, and the announcement was already moving beyond palace walls. Behind the closed library door, Catherine finally understood Anne's purpose. But outside Windsor, the appointment was about to be transformed into a national judgment on Camilla herself. The private struggle became public through one unforgettable front page. Across London, morning editions appeared beneath the headline, "Anne chosen, Camilla denied." The photograph showed the Princess Royal walking alone through the gates of Buckingham Palace, her expression composed, while a smaller image captured Catherine leaving Windsor with lowered eyes. Within hours, the role was no longer being discussed as an administrative safeguard. It had become a national symbol of trust, rejection, motherhood, and the limits of a queen's power. Catherine watched the coverage beside William, as commentators declared that she had been shattered by being passed over. The future queen flinched at the phrase. She had never sought the role, yet the public story made her look defeated. The prince switched off the television and reminded her that Anne had not replaced her. She had protected her. The palace statement only intensified the debate. It described Anne as a stabilizing figure responsible for family continuity and protection of the direct line during internal strain. Family continuity meant keeping the monarchy's future secure when private conflict threatened the heirs. That wording mattered because it confirmed the appointment had been created to contain a real danger, not honor tradition. Camilla read the front page at Clarence House. The Queen Consort circled the word "denied" with a pen and asked whether the palace could issue a correction. Her communications secretary answered that no statement could change the central truth. She wanted the role, and Anne received it. Camilla dismissed her, then stared at the headline alone. A broadcaster deepened the humiliation by reading the charter's sharpest restriction. No person married into the royal family could exercise independent authority over the direct heirs. The clause made the hidden purpose unmistakable. The public now understood that Anne's appointment was not merely about trust. It was also about limiting Camilla. Anne arrived at Buckingham Palace for her first formal briefing as a small crowd gathered outside. One woman called, "Protect Catherine." The princess paused for a fraction of a moment before continuing through the gates. That single reaction became the image replayed throughout the day. Supporters praised Anne's restraint, while critics argued that Camilla had been publicly punished for seeking influence she believed marriage had earned beside the sovereign himself. Charles saw the footage and knew the family could no longer control the meaning of his decision. William understood the same. Catherine, Anne, Camilla, the prince, and the king would now have to meet without advisors and face what the role had exposed. The crowd had chosen its symbol, the headlines had chosen their villain, and only one private reckoning remained before the family could decide what would survive the damage. The final meeting did not restore trust, erase humiliation, or pretend the family had not been changed. It delivered something more honest. Anne accepted the role without victory. Catherine entered without resentment. Camilla arrived knowing that the authority she had demanded would never be hers. And Charles faced the consequences of allowing private promises to grow into a royal crisis. By the time the doors reopened, the monarchy had reached a verdict. Power over the future heirs would never belong to ambition. Anne placed the sealed charter on the Windsor table. No advisors were present. The Crown Family Guardian, a private office created to protect the Wales household from outside pressure, would defend the family, she said, but never govern it. George, Charlotte, and Louis could no longer become bargaining pieces in palace disputes. William spoke next. The prince supported it because Catherine's authority as a mother remained untouched, and because Anne's mandate would expire when he became sovereign. Without those limits, he said, protection would become control. Catherine turned toward Camilla. She said her private letter had never been written to humiliate the queen consort. It came from fear. Her children had begun appearing in conversations where she held no voice, and she felt their future becoming something others could negotiate. Camilla did not defend every choice. She admitted, in the recorded account of the meeting, that she pursued the role because she feared becoming ceremonial and replaceable beside Charles. She did not apologize, but accepted fear had carried her across a boundary that was never hers. Charles spoke. The king confessed that he had allowed his wife to believe the position might be granted, because he lacked the courage to reject her clearly. His admission ended the suspicion that Catherine or Anne had engineered the crisis. Van signed a personal undertaking, promising never to act against William or Catherine, while either parent remained able to decide for the family. The princess handed Catherine the working copy of the Charter's protective clauses. Catherine left no longer shattered. Anne had not been placed above her, but beside her, a shield, not a crown. Camilla lost the authority she demanded. Charles accepted responsibility. The monarchy chose restraint over ambition, proving that loyalty does not mean access, marriage does not mean ownership, and protection is strongest when it refuses to dominate ever again. Anne received the title Camilla had demanded, but Catherine emerged with something greater: the certainty that the future crown would be protected without taking her children, her voice, or her place away from her. Thanks for watching. Please don't forget to like and subscribe, and we will see you in next one.